Is it hot in here, or is it just me? Yes, today on airfixing we'll be having a break from our more homebound brown and green planes for one in a desert scheme, the mighty Curtiss Tomahawk. Resplendent in sandy yellows and browns with a giant shark mouth to decorate its giant front with air intake, this plane was built as an export model of the American P-40 Warhawk. This kit comes as a starter set suitable for hopefully all novice builders, so that's what I'm going to build today. I'll be using some more materials than what come in the box, but feel free to follow along and you might learn something. But without further ado, let's get into the build. Alright, here we go. A Curtiss Tomahawk Mark IIB in 1/72nd scale. Now, let's get into this box. So, this is a gift set. You've got the paint scheme on the back and indicators for 4 different paints. Humbrol number 29, 33, 93 and 157, and all 4 of these are included in the box, you'll be pleased to know. You have a instruction manual, which tells you how to build the kit, and this comes with a set of 12 decals, and these will allow you to create all of the demarcations you can see here, and that includes such things as this shark mouth, which hopefully should fold over to get the desired effect of wrapping around the front of the plane. We have a bag containing another tube of 5 milliliters of polycement, the 4 paints we will need to complete the kit, and we can now open up this bag here, and this contains all the parts that we will need contained on just 2 sprues, plus this transparency sprue with 3 parts on it. So this seems to be quite light on parts. This kit is moulded in some very nice, thick, sturdy looking plastic, and yeah. There are some small areas here which could be at risk of being damaged if you're not careful, and I will say this does feel a bit greasy, so I think I'm going to give this a wash in some washing up liquid using something to the tune of a toothbrush, just to clean off any mold release gel that has built up on here, so that will help paints to apply better. Otherwise, we also have a number 2 size paintbrush, which I probably won't be using, and these materials are all you really need to complete the entire kit. However, I will be using some other materials, which I will just put up on screen now, and now we can get on to building. The cockpit section is all built onto the lower wing section and is very easy to construct. I painted everything in Humbrol number 93 before applying satin varnish over everything. I added some panel line wash with white, spirit, thinned enamel paint, then made liberal usage of my Revel weathering powders to get the effect of dust and dirt in the crevices of this cockpit. This is a desert scheme, so I thought I'd dirty it up quite heavily. I thought it might be interesting to experiment with it and show off the process to you. I used a frayed brush to just dust over the surface. You can knock off the excess and hoover it up, leaving some powder and still stuck to the texture of the part. You can now use some spray varnish to seal it in and protect from smudging. This will ultimately barely be seen once the model is complete, but you know I took the time to do it, and that's what matters. Hey! Constructing this model was one of the most pleasant model making experiences I've had. The fit of the 2 fuselage halves was exquisite, and little to no sanding was needed to remove the seams between the 2 parts once glued. The fuselage went beautifully onto the wings, and only a small amount of plastic putty was needed around the wing roots to fill in the small gaps found there. I PVA'd the cover of the front fuselage in with the view to remove it and install the propeller later. I also decided to leave the canopy off until the end, unlike previous builds, so having constructed what I needed, I continued on to painting. Before painting fully, I gave the entire model a coating of Humbrol No. 1 primer. This will help further coats apply better and should prevent them from wearing off and peeling with age and handling. I would like to credit this clip to @Oasis_Oracle, who you should go check out because his videos are fun. I then painted the underside of the plane with No. 157 blue, applying coats in alternating directions thinly to prevent brush strokes. At this point I attached the landing gear to the underside so it wouldn't get scratched from resting on the table during further painting. I then painted the top side in No. 93 before freehanding the camo in No. 29 using the box art diagrams as reference. These weren't particularly helpful in some areas, as the pattern seemed to go in different places on different views of the plane, meaning I had to improvise somewhat to get a pattern that worked. I installed the exhaust at this point along with the pitot tube and the propeller. Unfortunately, the stem of the prop was too short and I could not get it to spin once glued, which was unfortunate. I'd also mislaid the pitot tube, so I'd made the substitute out of a small piece of copper wire I had lying about. I then sprayed some satin varnish over the whole model, but I think I applied it too thickly as it went cloudy once dry. Thankfully, I was able to sand off the varnish with some fine grit sandpaper and reapplied it more thinly, which turned out better. And now, I was ready to apply the decals. Most of the decals applied very well to this kit. Using Decal Fix I was able to soften them into the panel lines, making them look more painted on. The main challenge in this process is the Tomahawk's distinctive shark mouth. The decals did not conform perfectly to the geometry of the plane's nose, so I did have to touch them up once dry using paint, especially around the air intake where the decals did not align correctly whatsoever. Once I had fixed those areas though, I could seal in the decals with some more satin varnish and move on to weathering. First, I used white spirit to thin down an enamel wash, applying it onto the panel lines before wiping off the excess with a Q-tip. I then used a cocktail stick to dot Humbrol No. 11 silver around the ring roots and panel lines for a chipping effect. I applied this quite heavily because all that sand, I don't like sand, would undoubtedly cause a lot of scratching of the paint. Finally, I used a lot of weathering powder in black, rust and sand and dark brown to dirty up the plane's exhaust and guns. I used gloss spray varnish to seal in the weathering. Because I didn't want to muck it up, I used this old Spitfire, subject to my first air fixing episode and now my model making torture mule, to test out the varnish on a small area. I found that you need to shake the can well and also preferably be in a warm area to apply it, lest it go cloudy and nasty. Unfortunately, it was February in the UK, so it was freezing cold outside. Not wanting to choke out my house, but still wanting to keep my kit warm during painting, I stood by the open front door inside the house in order to apply the varnish, and thankfully, it went on without a hitch. And having painted up and attached the clear parts, my kit was complete. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. I love this model. It was one of my most pleasant building experiences to date, and the results turned out absolutely exquisite. My weathering, whilst heavy, turned out amazing in my opinion, and I am proud at how clean the paintwork turned out. The pulp is some of the best I've ever had from an Airfix kit, and if you're prepared to do some touch up on the shark mouth, the decals will be just fine too. Of Airfix's starter kit offerings, I think that this is one of the best. It's simple and intuitive to construct, but still somewhat complex, and will really help you to advance your model making skills. It also looks cool as fuck, so if I had to recommend a new model maker a starter kit to build from Airfix's range, I would definitely tell them to build this one. It's absolutely amazing. But anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you all next time. Please like, subscribe and watch all of my other things, and see you around.